Hello, I believe we are live. Um, Welcome to tonight's seminar, Update the Landscape. We are here with Jackie Riffice tonight, and I'll tell you a little bit about her. First, though, I just wanted to mention that tomorrow, in honor of Earth Day, we're doing our Earth Day Bungalow Blackout again. We've done this for several years, and it's usually pretty popular event. Just turn off all of the lights that you don't need in your house from 8 to 9 p.m. Light some candles, hang out, take some pictures, celebrating just a dip in our electricity usage. And when you do that, post that on social media with the hashtag Bungalow Blackout, and you can qualify to win a $250 gift certificate to Walgreens. So we are rewarding your blackout efforts and appreciate it. I will be doing this myself for sure. In terms of how this is going to run tonight, for those of you who haven't joined us for webinars before, we'll be currently recording this, so it will be recorded. We're also on Facebook Live right now. You can watch this afterwards on our Facebook page or go to our website at www.chicagobungalow.org and find recordings of our webinars on there. Jackie tonight is going to speak for about 45 minutes or so, and then whatever time we have left remaining until 7 p.m. we're going to do some Q&A. You can't use the chat is disabled, but type all of your questions into the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end. So I know sometimes people join along the way, and don't be frustrated if you're not if we can't answer it right away. We're going to save it all for the end just so we can make sure Jackie has time to get through everything. Also, a lot of times questions are answered as the speaker is going, of course, naturally as well. I think that's about all I have in terms of those announcements. So let me tell you about Jackie and Update the Landscape. Jackie actually gave another talk a couple of weeks ago that was hugely popular. She's been talking, giving seminars and webinars and all kinds of stuff for us for 150 years now, I believe, as long as I've been a part of this organization as well. Jackie was born and raised in the south suburbs. She grew up in Dolton and settled in Flossmoor with her husband Larry, and raised 2 kids, 2 adults who are good citizens of the planet. She found quite by accident that gardening was relaxing and that digging in the dirt was her happy place. Along the way, she founded Prairie Godmothers, a service-based, hands-on company that created sustainable home landscapes and touted the benefits of greener living by demonstrating how to save the planet in easy-peasy ways. Jackie put Prairie Godmothers to bed a few years ago, but continues to help out when a call comes in. Jackie's a master gardener, a volunteer in the Lurie Garden in Chicago, which I think you said you've been doing for about 11 years now. She serves on a church board and the Flossmoor Community Relations Commission, and she's been involved in the community there for over 35 years. She's had a long history with the Chicago Bungalow Association, and she's happy for the opportunity to work with their members, which you have done beautifully for so long now. Thank you. All right, I am happy to pass the mic over to you now, Jackie, and want to take it from here.
Great, thank you, Carla. I'm going to share my screen. Making sure you can see it, Carla, can you?
Yep, I can see it.
All right. So thanks for having me again tonight. We're going to talk about updating your landscape, and I'll give you some tips for fabulous herb appeal. The thing is to plan now and do it yourself later. This is the year to tweak the landscape, and now is the time to start thinking about it. We had a really great day today, but the weather's been up and down. In your area, in the city, your last frost will be about April 28th, something like that. The Farmer's Almanac said it would be April 18th, but we've since had snow. So anyhow, Prairie Godmothers is going to show you ways to upgrade your garden border, create a stunning entrance, add lighting, and bring more color to your home during every season. And just as a reminder, this is being recorded, but this deck will be available for you as well. So Carla did a great introduction for me. I always sound a lot better on paper than in real life. But I want to show you this photo was taken at 10 this morning as I was doing my volunteer gardening in the Lurie Garden in Millennium Park. So if you haven't visited one of the world's largest and most beautiful rooftop gardens, find your way to Millennium Park and into the Lurie Garden sometime this summer.
I'll do that right there. Like, that's not a problem.
Carla? Okay, we're
Yeah,
gonna
I
keep
think,
going.
sorry about that. I think somebody's mic came off there.
Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Let's get going. Is it time to spruce your place up? If you want a bungalow reboot, consider some things you can do yourself or with a partner in a day or a weekend or at your leisure. None of the ideas I'm presenting tonight are incredibly difficult, and I can say that with all honesty because I've done most of these things either by myself or with a partner. So we're going to give you some really great ideas to plan now and do later. Home improvements always sound better than until you actually have to start doing the work. Let me pose 4 questions to you before you put time and money out the window. The first question is, do you know what you want your space to look and feel like? Have a vision of what you want your house to look like. And if you don't really know, just walk around the block, drive around the neighborhood, and find places and gardens and landscapes that inspire you. The second question you should consider is your budget. What does your budget look like? Here's a tip. If you're doing the work yourself, it costs between $6 and $15 per square foot for good plants, good soil, and good mulch. It doesn't include the price of shrubs or trees, but you can budget accordingly. Again, that's $6 to $15 per square foot. The third question is, do you have to do it all right now? That depends on what you have time and interest and energy for, because you really don't. I'm going to show you how to do things a step at a time. And finally, do you have the time and energy and the skill to finish with what you start? So be really realistic when you're thinking about your landscape, because it can be exhausting. I've provided what we call watering can estimates that help you gauge the time and effort to get these things done. My assumption for the ideas that I'm presenting is that you have the skill. And like I said, I've done these things and I'm presuming you can do it too. 1 watering can is 6 hours of work or less, as long as you have your supplies ready. 2 watering cans is a few days, up to 4 days, actually. Again, all the supplies are ready. And 3 watering cans is a few weekends, maybe a few months, maybe a few years. It's something that you can do at your leisure. And the things I'm talking about tonight will put watering can estimates with most of them. So we'll talk tonight about creating a welcoming front entry, looking at path and walkway lighting, as well as a front yard facelift. These will all step up your curb appeal. And while we're talking about the front yard, they can apply to the backyard and the side yard for the most part as well. Welcoming your front entry is a 1 watering can effort for the most part. Again, it's 6 hours or less. Your home should be inviting. It should display your personal style, whether that's overstated or understated, showy or sublime. And you should have a landscape interest for all 4 seasons. Your front entry should make your dog walker stop and take notice. It should make you feel great that you live in an historic home. So here's some inspiration to get you started by changing the color of your front door, adding flair with a new address plate or house numbers, adding or updating lighting, and creating a small focal point. In these examples, they'll point out what I just mentioned: the front door color, an address plate, porch lighting, and a focal point. The picture on the left-hand side is an example of a small focal point size just right for a bungalow entry. Consider adding a bench, a mirror, a seasonal wreath, a potted tree, or a sign that says welcome, something that will just catch somebody's eye as they're walking up the steps to your house. The red door in the middle has some trendy individual numbers that clearly call out the address of your home. And as a person who is always looking to see where you're hiding your bungalow address, let's be honest, they're not always right out there. This would be a very welcome and very easy update, and I would love you for it. The last picture is updated lighting, which we'll talk more about in just a minute, but it's an overhead pendant light. And it also has potted plants of various heights that can be changed by season. So you can see the balance here of color and style, and it says very clearly, welcome to the house. Oops, sorry about that. If you don't know what color to paint your house, paint your door, let's talk about brick and paint colors. If you walk around your neighborhood, you'll see doors that are painted black or white. Nothing wrong with black or white, except they can feel a bit stale. So let your doors reflect your personal style while still honoring the integrity of your bungalow. The most common brick bungalow colors are red, orange, yellow, and brown. And some paint colors work better than others. And let me explain that to you. If you have dark red brick, dark hues like green and gray and navy are really eye-catching on a door. There's always a surprise color you can add, a goldenrod color, which is in the gold and yellow family. But there are really different ways to accent the color of the brick with khaki, mushroom, and taupe as well. If you have orange brick, how about a light sage, a teal, or a turquoise? And in this case, an off-white is not such a bad color at all, but there's always a surprise color. A cobalt blue would certainly be a showstopper. If your brick is yellow, look at soft blues or corals, gray, black, or white, and a surprise color. The color of the year is called Very Perry. It's a periwinkle color, and you're going to find that color everywhere. Designers use it for accents in the home, for flowers in the garden, and you can add it to your door as well. And then if you have brown brick, any shade of brown that is lighter than the brick itself will work really well as a berry or a rust color. But how about trying a soft yellow or a copper? And if you're one of those folks that has a beautiful wooden door that you don't want to paint, refinish your door in a dark chestnut or a mahogany stain for a really updated vibe. And these are actually, again, as I said, 1 watering can projects. When we talk about lighting, this is a 2 watering can project because it could take up to 4 days, and you might need a partner depending on whether you use electric or solar lighting. Light up your entryway using any or all of these suggestions. Soft lighting illuminates an entry or a path and adds an element of safety from intruders. You can update your porch light with overhead pendants or sconce lighting, just as long as you purchase for longevity. Purchase a lighting that will protect against rust, moisture, and cold weather elements. Think about staked lighting for a distinctive and safe walkway, and make your walkway even safer by staggering the lights on both sides of the path to create a sense of balance, but also to avoid a runway look. And then finally, if you have evergreens you want to highlight or an accent tree, consider a single lamp to highlight that area. The other thing you need to consider when it comes to lighting is whether you want to use electric or solar lighting, and that's purely a homeowner preference. Solar lighting is indeed the least expensive, but there are perhaps just 1 or 2 downsides in that solar lighting is often not as vibrant as electric lighting, and the solar light battery, the battery life of solar lighting is around 2 years. If you like electric light, there are a number of bulb options, including LEDs, fluorescence, and incandescence, but the longest and best energy cost is to use LED lighting. So we talked porch lighting. We talked new doors and a new entry. Let's talk about wow. Like an old and overstuffed chair, this landscape view is very comfortable and reflects 1960s landscaping with plantings really close to the house and evergreens shaped like meatballs and boxes. Let's try something new, shall we? There's absolutely nothing wrong with these homes here. They're neat and tidy. And if you don't feel like doing a thing, you don't have to do a thing. But what I'd advise if you want to do something is to start with what you have. If you want to stay within a 3 watering can estimate, not to exceed a couple weekends. Starting from scratch is time and labor intensive and can be a bit pricey. But I'll show you in 4 steps how you can go from just blah to fabulous this summer. 4 steps. Look for the arrow with the number 1. And we're going to talk about adding curves, not edges, to your landscapes. Curves are visually appealing and very welcoming. And as you can see, this landscape is pulled from the front of the house with a very interesting curve that brings your eye right to the landscape. The second part of the facelift is adding or enhancing the evergreens you have for all year color. You want something that's going to stay green even after all the leaves have fallen off the shrubs and all the flowers are out of bloom. You do want small shrubs for seasonal interest, which you can have winter, spring, and fall. So you're going to want to add small shrubs over a period of time. And then finally, the 4th step is to add perennials, grasses, bulbs for the really colorful oohs and ahs that you'll find in your garden. You don't have to do all 4 of these steps right away, but you should do them in this order because this order provides scale and adds balance, form, and flow. Step 1 is a 2 watering can effort. If you're looking at the front of your yard, it's because it involves digging, mulching, and oftentimes laying pavers. So extend your plant lines away from windows and into the yard. If you can't visualize how you want that part of your landscape to look, take a long extension cord or a hose or a piece of rope and just lay it on the sod in front of the house in a way where you think you might want to extend away from the house. At least that'll give you a really good visual. So pull the planting line away from the front of the house, edge the space with a clean cut, like what you see on the far left, with pavers, which is in the middle, or decorative edging. And then make sure you add 3 inches of hardwood mulch. And if this is all you do this year or any year, it gives the green space a neater look, kind of like a crisp white shirt or maybe a new shade of lipstick. Step 2 is to add evergreens for all year color. Again, it can be 4 days of effort. Involves digging and planting. You need to have something green all year round after the leaves fall. So add some evergreen color. These recommendations aren't the only evergreens out there, but they're good choices for bungalows. They're low to medium growers, and many have dwarf varieties. In the picture, you'll see junipers on the left, and you'll see yews in the back and boxwoods in the front on the picture on the right. But here's some things to keep in mind. Generally, the evergreens are in the back of the landscape, but they don't have to be. And here's what you need to remember when you go shopping. Know your sun and shade exposure before you buy. Incredibly important to make sure you put the right plant in the right location. You may need additional garden soil, to add to the holes that you dig, because your soil is guaranteed either sandy or clay or both in various parts of the yard. So you might want to amend the soil a little bit with a good garden soil. Purchase in odd numbers. It's more visually pleasing when you purchase in 3s, 5s, and 7s. Follow the tag directions for planting and plant care. That's incredibly important because when you put these things in the ground, they're teeny tiny and you need to understand what to expect. And it'll take a few years to get a full look. And finally, save your receipt, because a lot of nurseries will refund within a year if the shrubs fail. If you already have shrubs, evergreens in your yard that are out of control, give them what we call a hard prune and cut them way, way back. But read about it before you take the clippers and chop them apart, because there's a certain way to do it that takes a little bit of time for you. Here's another 2 watering can effort, a couple days, and these are small shrubs for seasonal interest. You need to have some color in the spring, summer, or fall. And again, these aren't the only shrubs, but they're good choices for bungalows. That includes spirea, hydrangea, sweet spire, a fire dance dogwood, and I put the variety up there because it is a small grower. It's very low to the ground as opposed to other dogwoods. A cotoneaster, and summer sweet. All of those are good for small landscapes. They're really great for bungalows, and they like a variety of sun and shade depending on which particular shrub you select. They can be at the back of your space, closer to the house, or they can be scattered in front of your evergreens. They can be used as bookends on either side of your porch, depending on the design of your front entry. Here at my house, I live in a ranch. I have hydrangeas up close to my landscape, and I have low evergreens in front of them. But again, keep the same things in mind. Know your sun and shade exposure, purchase in odd numbers, follow the tag directions. Pick a flower or a stem that complements your brick. So if you have a red brick, you'll want something that has a lighter green leaf to it, perhaps. Be patient with your shrubs because it takes a couple of years for a full look. And I'd advise to not prune for at least 3 years, not cut them back. And again, save that receipt. You might be able to get a replacement should the plants fail within a year. These trees, these ornamental trees look big, but this takes under 6 hours for you to do. If you dare, you can add what's called an ornamental shrub that catches the eye. You just need one, and it can be a focal point on either side of the house or in that landscape garden that you've pulled away from the front of your house. Again, the same rules apply, but I just wanted to say that these are 5 of my favorites: a 9-bark, a serviceberry, a Japanese maple, witch hazel, and smoke bush. These girls all have multi stems to them. So they're not actually, we call them screens. They won't really block light, and they won't provide total shade, but they just give a really nice look to the front or the side of the house. This is the fun part that you can play with at low cost and play with a very varied color palette. You have to know your sun and shade exposure before you buy, again, but pick colors that complement your brick. Add as many to your front border as you want. Again, buy in uneven numbers, but don't use more than 5 varieties of plants. It can get a little tangled up and a little overcrowded. So if you pick between 3 and 5 varieties, buy as many as you want, but just don't exceed the number of varieties. I'd also recommend that you add bulbs in the fall for great spring color. I recommend daffodils. They're not preferred by any of the little critters that might come around your neighborhood. And you can purchase daffodils that have different bloom times, early, mid, or late spring, as opposed to tulips or other spring flowers who are a bit more finicky. These guys are perennials, and they'll come back every year. When it comes to perennials, again, these are some of my favorites that bring a lot of color and interest to the garden at various times through the gardening year. But remember, perennials, they're plants that come back every year. The first year they sleep, the second year they creep, and the third year they leap. All to say that you just really need to be patient. I should mention that all of these pictures are compliments of the Bungalow Association website. So this bungalow has all the elements that I'm sure they match the personal style of the homeowner. There's curves, not edges, and a protective mulch. There's evergreens for all year color. There's shrubs for seasonal interest. And then there's perennials and grasses for all those oohs and ahs. It's welcome and inviting for all 4 seasons, as well as the flower boxes and the planters that are on the front porch. All the elements are here as well, including a surprise, which is an ornamental shrub, just one. Again, curves, not edges, and a protective mulch. And there's a very interesting rock border that this homeowner added. Evergreens for all year color. And we can see evergreens toward the back of the house in various spots. Shrubs for seasonal interest, like the hydrangea with the beautiful white blooms, and the summer sweet, again with white blooms. And then you'll see interesting perennials and grasses here as well. I'm guessing that this house might get a little more shade than many houses, because this, the grass in the front of the house is called Hakoni grass, and that does well in partial shade. So with the hydrangeas and the grasses, it seems to me that this is a partially shaded area, and it looks really great as well. We're actually coming toward the end of the presentation. We talked about creating a welcoming entry. And when we talked about that, I shared with you some 1 watering can things you can do, which would be changing the color of your front door, adding a new address plate or house numbers, and creating a small focal point that's just right for a bungalow entry. We talked about path and walkway lighting, and depending on the lighting you choose, electric or solar, it can take 6 hours. It might just take a couple days, but simply changing your pendant light above your front porch or your sconce lighting gives the area a really great look. And if you want to highlight the walkways up to your porch or on the side of your house to the back of your yard, consider pathway lighting. Make sure you stagger the lights so that you avoid a runway look. Then we talked about a front yard facelift, moving from the 1960s landscaping with plants close to the house and evergreens that are shaped like meatballs and boxes. Again, there are 4 steps to updating the front of your house with a facelift. The first one is to pull your garden space away from the front of the house with some curves so that you have more planting space and a little different look as people are walking past your house or up your walkway. You want to have them curved, and then you want to put a protective mulch down. We didn't really talk much about mulch, but I recommend natural hardwood mulch as opposed to many of the other colored mulches you could buy, because coloring will leach into the soil and it's not healthy for your soil. But again, buy what your pocketbook allows you to do. I suggested some evergreens that you might like. And again, if you didn't have a chance to write these things down, we talked about adding yews, boxwoods, false cypress, holly, juniper, or a dwarf Norway spruce. Those are my favorites, and they're the reason you need to know whether you have sun or shade or the lighting in front of your house is that some of these prefer more sun than others. Some prefer more shade. The fourth step in a front yard facelift is adding more shrubs for seasonal interest. And again, my favorites are very colorful shrubs that are low growing. A spirea, hydrangea, sweet spire, cotoneaster, summer sweet, and fire dance dogwood. All of those have color at various parts of the season, spring, summer, and fall. And then finally, we talked about perennials, adding color to your landscape. Perennials, grasses, and bulbs, and that's where you get that's really the fun part. It's generally very low cost, and you can take up to 5 varieties, different types of perennials, and add some interest that matches your personal style. So short and sweet, we're kind of coming to the end of this. So as Carla said, I've been with the Bungalow Association for about 150 years. Some days it feels like I've been around that long, but I am a friend to the Bungalow Association. I field phone calls from the members often, and I'm glad to talk to anyone if they have particular questions. I'll answer emails, anything I can do to help, I'd be glad to do. So I want to thank you for your attention this short time we've had together. And I'm going to leave it to you, Carla, to see if there's any questions, and I'll stop sharing.
Great. Thank you so much, Jackie.
Mhm.
That was great. I always learn so much. I'm like, in my mind, I was imagining doing like I have like the Doors of Ireland posters that everybody goes crazy for. I'm like, we could have the Doors of Bungalows,
Yeah.
if everyone sort of
Well,
got on this door train.
The thing is, I was when I was researching this, one of my pandemic projects was painting my front door. I have red brick, and I used a goldenrod color because I have stone that has that color in there. But as I was walking around my neighborhood of various types of homes, there's a few bungalows here in Flossmoor, but there are various styles. Most every door was black or white, and the doors that caught my attention were the ones that had a bit of wow to them. So
Always.
with a small narrow home like a bungalow, it's just a perfect thing to get
Totally. And I loved how you did the colors, like what, because it's like, not every color is going to look great with every, because I mean, the brick, there's a lot of variety in the colors of bungalow brick, and to break it down that way, that was super useful. I love that. I want to remind everybody too, that we're going to send out a follow-up email after this. That's going to have a link to the recording tonight. So you can go back and look at that as much as you want. And also Jackie's presentation. So you can look at that as well. So, keep that in mind as well. And we do have some questions here. Just wanted to get to Jackie. What is your email address again? Just sort of somebody asked for it.
It is J.A. Riffice. That's R-I-F-F as in French fry, I-C-E at Comcast.net.
Okay. And just a reminder, guys, please put anything you have in the Q&A, not in the chat box going forward, just because it's too hard to keep track of both of these. Um, so, all right, let's go to the Q&A. Okay, hi. One side of our house is along a side alley, and we always have struggled with what to plant there that would look nice, but would also be fairly durable against traffic / salt, etc. Any suggestions for what we could plant for a DIY facelift?
What kind of sun do you get? Does
Well,
she know? Well, here's some suggestions. If you're looking for something durable on the side of the house, has a lot of staying power, that you don't have to do a lot of things to, I would look at sedum, sedum. Sedum can grow tall up to 12 inches, and there's also low growing sedum, but it seems to do well in most any kind of light, and it's a very, very durable plant. The key to that is, well, there's lots of little tricks to sedum, but if you get a couple plants over a period of time, you can clip them down and then take the stalks and put them in the soil, and they'll continue to grow. So that's how you multiply the sedum. But I'd look at sedum. I might look at some grasses. If you want tall grass that's durable, look for a clumping grass, not a spreading grass. And there's something called Carl Forester. That's a tall grass. It looks like a piece of wheat. That's a great plant to have. So those would be two suggestions. And if it's an area deep enough for shrubs, you might want to just put a border of spirea in there. Again, they stand the test of time. So those would be a grass, a shrub, and a flower that you might want to consider.
and it does say, he did respond that he actually has full sun 6+ hours daily, but other people also like it. So I think it's kind of a common question. Yep. So,
yep.
Okay. Are the bushes, shrubs, and trees you suggest good for 8B zone? Do you know what the 8B zone is?
It's generally, I don't know if it's warmer or colder, to be honest with you. These are all 5A and B. We're in zone 5A and B. So okay. I don't know. I don't
say for sure.
These are particular. I mean, I will look in my book and answer that, but these are shrubs that are specifically recommended for growing in Chicago. But I'll follow up and let you know if there's any other zones.
Great. Thanks, Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
Is it too late in the season to trim boxwoods? And then there's another follow-up boxwood question that is, I have some boxwoods that are infested and dying. Should I cut them down? So when is it too late to trim? And
boxwoods are just starting to bloom right now, they're starting to sprout right now. I wouldn't trim them down right now. I would wait, if they're unwieldy, I would wait till later in the season, but they're just starting to wake up after a long winter's nap. So unless you want to keep them at the size they are right now, I wouldn't do anything to try to shape them until, I wouldn't think about it until we get to July, perhaps.
Actually, too early to trim them. Okay.
Yes, too early. If they're, I'm not really savvy on all of the kinds of things that can infest plants and shrubs. So I don't know what it is, but if you can't identify whatever is getting at the plant, you can always contact your local master gardener, University of Extension Master Gardener office, and they can help you with that. And the reason I say that is you can buy topicals that will rid you of whatever is, what if it's a fungus or a bug or something, but you also want to make sure it's not a soil-borne problem. If that's the case, you have to actually pull it out of the ground and watch what you plant there next.
Yeah. And how do you reach your local master gardener? Is there a website or something?
You would go to University of Illinois Extension. I think that would be what I would Google, And every state has an extension office that focuses on things like gardening and plant care, animal care. The University of Illinois is the extension that we use here. So I would Google University of Illinois Extension, simply a phone call. There are a number of offices in the Chicago area, and it's simply a phone call, and you'll get someone like me on the other end, a master gardener, who will answer your question. And it's all fact-based and researched.
That's fabulous. Okay, we have 3 people who also liked this question, so I think it's a big one. What's the best way to remove established, nice sized bushes?
Well, the best way to remove them is to have them professionally removed after you call or dial 811 for Julie, because you never know what's under there. Some shrubs are not deeply rooted, but some are. Most evergreens are. If you're bound and determined to do it yourself because you want to get rid of them, I mean, completely get rid of them, I would prune it down to as low as you can go, sometimes 12, 15 inches, depending on what kind of shrub we're talking about. And then you're just going to have to work your way around the circumference of the shrub to dig it out. But it that might even be a 4 or 5 watering can effort. Kind of just depends on what it is. If you can have it professionally done, your landscaper can come in with actually a tool that can pull it up out of the ground.
Okay.
And I know that because I've tried removing my own, and I've got the sore knees and the fake hip to vouch for it.
Jeez, ends up being more expensive in the long run when you got to buy a hip, right? All right. I have an overflow piping in my front yard as a result of flooding. What would you suggest to hide them? Oh, overflow pipe. Okay, so they had to have piping added that I think is sort of extending above.
So you want to, okay, so
you want to hide it, yeah.
If you want to hide it, I don't know how much above the ground it is, but I'm guessing that the area around that could perhaps be wet or moist. So you're going to want to plant, I don't know if we're talking shrubs or flowers, but you're going to want to plant things that like wet feet. And there are a number of plants that prefer moisture. A lot of them are can be like a monarda or coreopsis. I can give you some examples with a little research of what shrubs and plants you might want to use. Often grasses, because they absorb a lot. But let me take that one for homework, Carla, and
Great, yeah.
I'll give you some ideas. And if that person can tell you how much, if it's a shrub worthy area or a plant worthy area, I can give you better suggestions.
Okay. Yeah, and again, any questions that Jackie's writing out now will include in the email that's going to go out after this. Everybody who signed up is going to get this follow-up email. So we already have your email addresses, so we can do it that way. Okay, I'm disabled and would love something simple that brings butterflies and birds, as well as something that is safe for my service dog, but doesn't take too much effort. I don't have a green thumb at all. Help. Thank you for this.
If you want to attract birds and butterflies, you can do them in containers, and you can have plants in containers, and you can have plants in the ground. So let's start with some container plants that you can put on your porch or in your backyard. Things that attract butterflies are often very colorful, very nicely scented, and they're annuals, which means they don't come back every year. Verbena comes to mind, pansies come to mind, often petunias in various colors. And so they'll attract butterflies. If you are talking about plants in the ground, or actually, if you like bees and want to have some of them coming around, also in pots or in the ground, you can have really nice herbs like lavender, dill, parsley, sage, rosemary and thyme. It sounds like a song, but nicely scented herbs in pots will attract beneficial insects, we call them, so bees and butterflies. None of them are harmful to a service dog. And if you want to attract birds, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, it's awful nice to have a feeding station for a bird that might be filled with black sunflower seed. And you're going to want to position that little bird feeder in a place that's among what we call a safe haven for a bird, in between other plants or shrubs, so that they feel protected from the environment. Put some black sunflower seed in there, and maybe have a little bird bath where they can relax and take a bath as well.
Yeah, I really remembered that about the
Yeah.
bird houses, because you
Yeah.
always see them standing in the middle of like an
Yeah.
empty barren yard, and
Yeah.
they're just like, why would I want to go there? I'm a target, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah,
Yeah.
we took that to
So,
heart.
but pots and containers do wonderful things. You can have them and you can move them all around the house. So again, a prairie godmother trick is this: if you like pots and you want to plant in pots, save your water bottles and crush them. They're like plastic rocks that help with drainage. Fill your pot, is generally a large pot, 10 inches wide or wider. Fill it halfway with water bottles. Put your potting soil in there and plant. That gives you the ability to move that container around to get better sun if the sun should move.
Yeah, so much later. Another person responded to that too and said that they love coneflower, that it's a perennial, but butterflies also love coneflower.
Yes, absolutely. There are both perennial and native versions of coneflowers. It's also, the botanic name is echinacea. And yeah, I have a mix of coneflower, liatris, hyssop, any number of things in my garden. One thing that attracts butterflies and bees, however, is a color, a bright color. So I don't mix my colors. I have a patch of red, I have a patch of pink, I have a patch of white, because they're attracted by the same color.
Okay, what do you suggest for a perennial ground cover for a small, fun sun garden bed?
The first thought that comes to mind is thyme. It's a steppable ground cover. It smells really good too, and it spreads around. And I like that. And actually, I'm trying to think what else I have. A ground cover that is not really considered a standard ground cover would be a small grass called blue fescue. It's a low-growing, small mounding grass that kind of reseeds in little pieces. And again, it makes blue fescue makes a nice carpet for ground cover, and it's kind of an unexpected ground cover.
Cool.
And there's low sedum. There's low growing sedum. We talked about sedum earlier, but there's creeping sedum that, again, it comes back every year and it'll spread around. It's very low, 4 or 5 inches.
Okay, now we're moving bigger here. Hi, is it good to plant an Alberta spruce in front of my house? I'm replacing 3 evergreen trees that had to be removed because they died.
That's a pretty big spruce. I wouldn't suggest planting anything of that size any closer than 5 or 6 feet from the house. The root system of trees, even a spruce, is as wide as the canopy. So you're gonna, as wide as that tree will get at the top, it will get that way at the bottom, and it has a way of just causing problems with underneath concrete and things like that. So a dwarf version, it might be fine, a dwarf spruce, but again, take caution when you plant them and don't put them really, really close to the house. The other thing you want to consider is how much shade it might bring into the house. So if you have a good view of your window, that's a consideration as well.
All right, another one about size here. I'm looking to plant a few trees or shrubs that do not grow more than 10 to 12 feet high and keep their leaves through the winter. This would be for privacy. What do you suggest? A lot of people interested in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trees for privacy.
But
So-
10 to 12 feet. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm presuming it's maybe the side of the house and not the front of the house, but when I think about trees for privacy and how it's 10 or 20 feet,
10 to 12 feet high.
10 to 12 feet high. Actually, that really is more a large shrub,
Yeah,
if
this
you
is-
will.
Mhm.
I would look at a large shrub. You know, you can look at lilacs, you can look at privets. There are a number of shrubs that will grow tall. My favorite, and one where there are many, many varieties to select from, is called a viburnum. Viburnum. Viburnums come in various heights and widths. So at their tallest, it can be 10 or 12 feet, and their widest might be 4 feet. They do take some time to grow, but they also, they have white flowers, pink flowers. Some are nicely scented. There are some natives. They're very hardy in this area, and so they provide a really great natural fence that brings privacy. And they grow fast. They grow fast and wide.
Awesome. Thank you. I know you've brought up hostas before, but this person is just basically asking if you like hostas. I know you brought them up in previous
I do like
sessions.
hostas. Behind my house is all shade, and so I have a hosta garden back there. It's a shade-loving garden. I also have azaleas, hydrangeas, and hakoni grass. They're all shade lovers. And so what I love best about hostas, you know, they come in mini, small, medium, large, and extra large these days. And I like to split them and share them with friends and trade them with friends. So I have a really nice carpet of a variety of hostas back there that give me, they're coming up right now. So they just give me such delight all summer and fall long.
Okay, a grapevine that covered my back fence and provided privacy was damaged by some workers and unfortunately died. It was decades old. What grapevine or other creeping plant would you recommend that is fast growing and will do well in partial sun?
I'm going to get back on that one because the ones that are on the tip of my tongue are invasive. So, and I don't want to say them out loud because then that's what you'll remember and we don't do it. So tell me again what the requirements are, Carla.
So it used to be a
Vine.
grapevine that did very well, and there's on their back fence, so there's a fence there. So they wanted to know what grapevine or other creeping plant would you recommend that is fast growing and will do well in partial sun?
Okay.
And one person said clematis, maybe.
Clematis is doesn't give you the same coverage that a grapevine will, but there are a number of and actually we gardeners get real funny about clematis. It's clematis, but it sounds weird to say it that way.
That was my fault then.
No. Everybody says clematis.
I probably typed it that way, but
everybody says clematis. The thing is, some of them love sun, some of them prefer partial shade. You have to know what you're looking at. I think there's one called a wedding veil, which is autumn. It's called autumn something. The name escapes me. It's very full, but they don't. They have to be tied up. They don't grab onto things like an ivy or something. So let me give you some good suggestions. And I'll send it on to you.
Cool, thanks. This one had 2 people also thumbs up it, so let's jump to this one since we're running out of time. What would you recommend to create a natural fence year-round for privacy from neighbors in a full sun backyard, specifically not pine tree lake?
It's interesting how many people don't want to see their neighbors, isn't it?
Yeah. But they're not watching.
What I like for privacy, so when you're talking about privacy in a backyard, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. You really want to talk about tall and narrow. And so there's a form of holly called an ilex, I-L-E-X. I can give you more detail on it. And there's a form of boxwood that is also tall or cylindrical. Those would be the things that I would be looking at because they stay green all year round. There could be like a low growing, I think I said a low growing spruce or something, but a boxwood or a holly would be what I would look at first, but I can give you some suggestions on that as well. I'll find a yew that might work, but I would look at tall and narrow first.
Thanks, Jackie. You always have such hearty reply emails. Any plant recommendations for, sorry, whenever you're ready.
Yep.
Okay. Any plant recommendations for a full shade northern facing location that might add interest and or color, hopefully with less maintenance required?
Okay.
Just like dating profiles.
There's, you can always low growing plants. You can always consider hostas. And again, they make small little mouseier hostas and very extra large hostas. There's a plant called a stilby that happens to like a shaded area. Tiarella or foam flower happens to like a shaded area. But it's a perfect place also for hydrangeas, azaleas, and rhododendrons, particularly if the area is protected. Rhododendrons and azaleas fall in they're in the same family. They like a protected area. They will be blooming soon. There's some of the earlier bloomers in a season. And as long as it's in a protected area, they add lots of color to what you have. If you want a plant, but something a little taller, you can consider ligularia. It's called a bottle rocket or something like that, but ligularia is a good one. And then of course there's some medium growing grasses. I mentioned it earlier called Hakoni grass that would all work in an area like that.
Great. Well, we're at 7 o'clock. We have a couple people here who asked for recommendations for hardscapers and landscapers on the south side. Someone to design, a landscaper to design their backyard. We do have, I want to remind everybody, on our website, chicagobungalow.org, if you click on trusted referrals, we have a list of landscapers that our members have recommended. So definitely look there. Where they typically, their service areas and stuff, I think sometimes maybe are noted, sometimes, you just give a call. So that's a way to do it. And then there's a couple other questions. Maybe we can just knock these out real quick. Is that all right? Since there's only 2. I'd like to plant a mature weeping mulberry to replace an oversized blue spruce close to our house. Do nurseries carry mature trees relocated from somewhere else, or would I have to start a mulberry from scratch?
The answer is yes, and you have to, I believe there is, and they're pricey. They're pricey.
The mature ones.
The mature ones are. A nursery in Hinsdale comes to mind. The name escapes me, but yes, you can buy more mature trees, but they would be incredibly expensive. But you can find them. You can find them. You just have to search local small nurseries, and if they don't have them, they can often get them.
Okay. And last one then, what about wisteria? Would you recommend it for a small yard?
I've never had good luck with wisteria, to be real honest with you. It likes to climb a little and hang. And so I always say yes, I would give it a shot because you may have a better thumb than I do. It tends to be a little bit finicky in our weather, so it might not weather well from season to season.
All right. We did it. Perfect.
So I owe you information on the zone
Right.
for shrubs, a couple things. I'll get on that tonight.
Fabulous.
And
Thank
have
you
it
so
in your
much.
inbox
That's really
tomorrow.
generous. All right. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Jackie.
welcome.
Everybody for that email. I'm guessing it'll come out at some point next week. We'll send it out to everybody, and make sure you revisit our Facebook page or our website if you want to rewatch any of this as well. Jackie, thank you so much. Twice we got you in 1 month. That's what a treat. We had over 140 people on here tonight, I know. So live during like the nicest day we've had in like 7 years.
Yep.
So that really says something. So thank you again.
It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Thank you. Good night
All
now.
right. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.